Happy Tuesday to you, and welcome to the Agent Survival Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Ruppel, and today we are celebrating the arrival of summer, my favorite season, with an episode featuring some of my favorite podcasts. In addition to hosting this podcast, I am also a huge fan of listening to podcasts. I have a few business and marketing related podcasts that I listen to, and I've shared some of those previously here on the show. Mostly, though, I gravitate toward documentaries and fiction, and especially for the sake of this episode, I try to focus on entertaining shows rather than work-related podcasts. When I'm sifting through my podcast library, I'm looking for shows that you can listen to in the car on road trips, on a plane, while you're walking on the beach, or just spending an afternoon relaxing. So with that said, let's get into our list. Number 1. I think I've mentioned before that I am an early bird. My preferred wake-up time is between 4 and 5. I like catching those quiet, early morning moments to start my day, get a little caffeine going, and start my day in a positive way. And then I like to keep that momentum going with my podcast listening in the morning before work. It's a different vibe than what I listen to on the way home. There is one podcast I've been listening to lately that is a great way to start the day. And that is the Hustle Daily Show from HubSpot. I am a huge fan of their marketing and sales blogs, and the podcast feels like a natural extension of that. Episodes give a short daily rundown of tech and business news, most of which I've heard about, but sometimes they get me with a headline that I might have missed. Listening gets me in the frame of mind for work, thinking about some of my projects and tasks before I get into the office. It's a great way to keep the momentum moving during the commute, whether that's me driving into our headquarters in Harrisburg or just walking into my at-home studio and sitting down at my desk. The description for the show professes, quote, a daily dose of irreverent, offbeat, and informative takes, end quote. I'd say that's spot on, considering last week, episode titles included One Man's Quest to Make Pickleball Quiet, Campflation is Here, and The World's Subtitle Use is Speaking Volumes. On that last one, I have to confess, I'm coming around to the subtitle side. Episodes of the Hustle Daily Show typically clock in around 15 minutes and release daily on weekdays. Number 2, while the title of this one might make you think it's a morning show, you don't necessarily have to listen first thing in the morning. Before Breakfast with Laura Vanderkam can certainly be listened to before you have your breakfast, but it can also be listened to anytime you need a pick-me-up to get you going in a productive direction. Episodes are short, between 5 to 10 minutes long, and contain one tip per episode. Like last week's episode, Start with the Trash, which, if you've never heard of that concept, it's a pretty great suggestion for doing a little bit of cleaning, even when you don't want to. There's a huge back catalog of episodes, too, so if you find that you need a little help with productivity, getting started, organization, anything like that, I highly recommend this show. I've really been enjoying it. Number 3, if you're looking for a family-friendly podcast, I've got a great one that will be going all year long from Gen Z Media. They typically have at least one podcast putting out 2 new episodes a week. Last year, it was Tomorrow. Previously, it was Remy's Life Interrupted. And before that, it was 6 Minutes. For 2023, 6 Minutes is back with a spin-off / sequel of sorts, 6 Minutes Out of Time. and you don't necessarily need to have listened to the original story to like and appreciate the new spinoff. But you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of it if you do listen to the original story first. This time around, there's a mysterious school called Elixir Academy at the center of the story. Cyrus Anders visits on a tour early on in the show and then winds up in a coma. When his ex-girlfriend, Brinley Pasternak, looks for answers, she finds out that Cyrus was speaking to her mother, who had disappeared prior to the original 6-minute series. Cyrus connected Brinley's mom to a place called Elixir Academy, located on an island off the coast of Florida. With Elixir Academy potentially holding the key to her mother's disappearance, Brinley enrolls for the fall semester, rather than heading off to college in New York. If that's not mysterious enough, things get weird fast and only get stranger as the episodes wear on. The writers of the series are well adept at how to break up the story episodically, adding plenty of twists, turns, and fun cliffhangers. I can't say too much more because I don't want to spoil the story, but 6 minutes out of time is what happens when superhuman kids attend a boarding school with advanced technology on an island that reminds me of the one on Lost. Number 4. Articles of Interest has long been one of my favorite podcasts. Host Avery Trufelman started out on 99% Invisible, a design podcast that explores the backstory behind everyday objects and design. Articles of Interest is a spin-off focusing on mostly clothing and the occasional accessory. The first 2 seasons featured installments that focused on one clothing item per episode. Then in the 3rd season, Trufelman covered American Ivy, spending 7 episodes detailing the history of preppy Ivy style. And then on March 29th, in quite possibly the most perfect topic to lead in a podcast of this kind, Avery Trufelman announced plans to publish Articles of Interest episodes regularly, kicking it off with an episode on the Clueless Closet. Episodes have been published bi-weekly since then, and I've been enjoying hearing from Trufelman more regularly. If you've listened to 99% Invisible and you're a fan of Roman Mars, from his delivery style to his choice in episode topics, you will love Avery Trufelman. She exudes the same effortless, quirky yet thoughtful storytelling capability, and she also knows what curiosities to explore in her interviewing. This is now the 5th time I've mentioned this show as a podcast recommendation, but it's not just a continuation of the same old thing. Articles of Interest has evolved over time, and I'm excited to see how the show continues to evolve in the future, especially with a more regular schedule that might allow for more one-off niche explorations. Number 5, back into the fiction realm. I've got a podcast that's a great binge listen. Case 63. The story opens with psychiatrist Dr. Eliza Knight meeting a new patient, Case 63. He quickly informs her that he's from the year 2062 and has traveled back in time to save the world. As his therapy continues and he explains more of his story, Dr. Knight begins to question the world as she has known it. It's a fast-paced story with immersive sound design, so it's more like listening to a movie than listening to someone narrate a story. Dr. Knight is played by Julianne Moore, and Oscar Isaac voices Patient 63. The entire show clocks in at just under 2 hours, so that's what I mean when I say that it is a great binge listen. I'm hopeful for a 2nd season, but I'd also be okay with the story ending where it does in episode 10. Number 6, our next podcast drew me in because of the seeming similarities to Last Known Position. Both are billed as deep-sea submarine expeditions. Both expeditions are funded by billionaires, but there are very different circumstances that lead to very different outcomes. In the case of Cascadia, that's the name of the new ocean floor that appears after the Pacific Northwest suffers an earthquake and a tsunami. The billionaire in this story is an accomplished submarine captain who wants to explore the Cascadia subduction zone, but suffers an injury preventing him from doing so. He appoints Declan Walters as captain in his place, a rookie the crew is leery of following. Despite their misgivings, the expedition launches and things soon go wrong. But as per my usual, there are a couple of twists and turns that take the story in a direction I did not expect, and I do enjoy being surprised by a good plot twist. I was happy with the ending of the show. I could have left it at just one season, but there was a trailer for season 2 that appeared in the Cascadia feed in March of last year. Since that trailer was published, there has been no news on season 2, and the crowdfunding site for season 2 is now closed. So again, hard to say if the story will continue. All that said, season 1 definitely stands on its own and tells a great story worth listening to. Number 7. Next up, this is a show that did put out a second season to continue the story, and serendipitously enough, the second season premiered not too long after I had finished season 1, so I didn't have to wait very long for the story to continue. Love it when that happens. It does not happen often. Strange Air tells the story of a fiction radio show with the same name. Host Malcolm Smith covers all areas of the paranormal, and one day, in the middle of a radio broadcast, he simply disappears. Literally, 1 minute he's there, and the next he's not. 10 years go by, and his daughter Chase Smith begins filming a documentary about his disappearance. She interviews her family and her father's friends, going on a journey that begins with nostalgic memories of her father, but then moves into learning about a side of him that she never knew. And just like the topics he covered on his paranormal show, Strange Air, Chase soon discovers that the resolution to her father's story will be anything but normal. Number 8. Quick mention on this one because I have mentioned it before here on the show. Dream Breachers is currently putting out episodes of their 3rd season, but I am waiting on listening because we've been listening to this story as a family, and it has become a fun tradition that I want to continue. Dream Breachers tells the story of a young boy named Evan who can travel through dreams, both his own and others, and bring things back from the dream world into our world. Not all dream breachers are good, as we learn through a mysterious subplot at a place called the Dream Academy. This subplot often takes the job of describing some of the more nuanced parts of the story, like the lore surrounding Kilners, the colorful marbles that enable dream breachers to have specific dreams that also let them perform certain tasks, like opening or closing the breach to the dream world. In season 1, Evan discovers his powers and learns that there are good dream breachers and not so good dream breachers. In the 2nd season, he's on the hunt for a specific Kilner to save a friend. And then in the 3rd, it looks like he might accidentally make the world aware of his power, but I don't want to spoil the story, so that is where I will stop. Season 1 is free on all the podcast directories, like Apple, Spotify, Google, and the like. Season 2 and 3 are exclusive to Pinna. And yes, I did subscribe last year prior to our lake trip, so we could listen to Season 2. Pinna does offer a free 7-day trial. That is usually coupled with a pretty good offer of getting 1 year's worth of access to Pinna at a reduced rate as long as you sign up for annual billing. After you've used your free trial and the promo pricing, cost is $5.99 per month, billed annually for a total of about $72. Or you can go the monthly route at $7.99 a month, which if you keep your membership for an entire year, you'll end up paying about $96. I definitely recommend the free trial to get an idea of their full library of content and how much you'll listen, and then make the decision from there. Number 9. Both this and my last selection are 2 podcasts coming this summer that I'm looking forward to. And interestingly, both premiere on June 21st, so you can get in at the beginning and listen to these from their premiere date on. The first I'll mention comes from Pineapple Street Studios, Classy with Jonathan Menjivar. It's a podcast all about class because, as the description says, quote, people like to pretend that class doesn't exist, end quote. Jonathan Menjivar plans to host interviews that cover the uncomfortable topic of class, how it affects our everyday lives in ways that we probably don't even realize. I am intrigued by this concept. I'm curious who he'll be interviewing, what they'll be talking about, so I will be following along with the show when it comes out. And if you're wondering where you heard that name before, Jonathan Menjivar previously served as a producer on hit NPR shows Fresh Air and This American Life. NPR programming will always have a special place in my heart because that's what we listened to on our car trips in the days of terrestrial radio. We couldn't always find a radio station with family-friendly music, but we could always find an NPR station. Rounding out our list at number 10, another family-friendly podcast from the folks at Gen Z Media. This one is called Nightingale, and as I mentioned earlier, also premieres on June 21st. Nightingale is the story of 3 teens fighting cancer who find a magical portal in the hospital they're receiving treatment in. It leads them to a magical machine world whose inhabitants are fighting a battle of their own, the darkness. The kids, Danny, Rocco, and Sarah, with a little help from their mysterious doctor, could be the heroes the strange mechanical world needs. I've been following along with the show since the trailer dropped at the end of April, really looking forward to the show. Gen Z Media pretty much defined the category of family-friendly, cinematic quality podcast. So if this is anything like their other shows, this one will quickly become a new favorite. And that's all I've got this time around for podcast recommendations. Hopefully you've heard something that piqued your interest to listen to this summer, whether you're vacationing, working out, or just relaxing in the backyard. If you want even more recommendations, we've got the full list of my past recommendation episodes in the notes. And if you've got a podcast recommendation that you'd like to share with us, please send them our way at asgpodcast@ritterim.com. Thanks for listening. We will see you next episode. The Agent Survival Guide podcast is a production of Ritter Insurance Marketing, an integrity company. This episode was written and produced by me, Sarah Ruppel. Script editing by Tina Lamoureux. Podcast design by Urban Rivera. Artwork by Vivian Zhao. Follow along with us wherever you like to listen.